A gun clicks in the silence of the executive floor. "Don't move or she dies!" The masked man screams, his weapon pressed against billionaire CEO Amelia Caldwell's temple. Her bodyguards freeze. Her assistants sob. Chaos erupts as armed mercenaries seal every exit. But in the corner, a janitor in a faded blue uniform does something no one expects. He whispers 6 words that make every kidnapper's blood run cold. "If you pull that trigger, you'll never leave this building." Before we dive into this incredible story, I want to invite you to stay with me until the very end, because what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. And please drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Caldwell Industries' 42nd floor hummed their usual monotonous tune at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night that would change everything. Ethan Cole pushed his yellow janitorial cart down the marble hallway, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor, a sound so familiar it had become invisible just like him. His navy blue uniform hung loose on his lean frame, worn soft from years of washing. The name tag pinned crookedly to his chest simply read, "Ethan, Night Maintenance." He moved with the practiced efficiency of a man who knew every corner of this building, every shadow, every blind spot in the security cameras. Not because he was planning anything sinister, but because noticing things had once kept him alive in a very different life. "Evening, Mr. Cole." A security guard named Marcus called out, barely looking up from his phone. "Evening, Marcus. Knicks game." Ethan asked, his voice gentle, unremarkable. "Yeah, they're down by 12. Story of my life." Marcus laughed, still not really seeing him. That was fine. Ethan preferred it that way. He pulled out his phone. The screensaver showed a gap-toothed 7-year-old girl with wild curls and his same gray eyes. Lila. His daughter. His entire world. She'd drawn him a picture that morning before school, a stick figure with a mop standing next to a princess. "That's you, Daddy," she'd said, protecting the castle. "I just clean it, sweetheart," he'd replied, kissing her forehead. Same thing. She'd insisted with the absolute certainty only a 7-year-old could possess. Ethan smiled at the memory as he began emptying trash cans from the executive offices. Through the glass walls he could see her, Amelia Caldwell, still at her desk at nearly 10 o'clock, her silhouette sharp against the city lights stretching endlessly beyond her windows. He'd seen her hundreds of times. Everyone had. Amelia Caldwell was impossible to miss, not just because her face graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune, but because she carried herself like someone who'd never doubted her right to take up space. 38 years old, self-made billionaire CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in America. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her suits were always immaculate. Her heels always clicked with purpose. She'd walked past Ethan exactly 467 times in the 3 years he'd worked here. She'd looked directly at him maybe twice. Said hello never. Not that he minded. Invisible was safe. Invisible meant he could go home to Lila every morning, make her pancakes, walk her to school, pretend the hardest thing he'd ever done was scrubbing coffee stains from conference room carpets. "Ethan." A voice crackled through his radio. "Can you head up to the executive conference room? They're wrapping up a late meeting. Gonna need a quick cleanup." "Copy that, Jenny. On my way." He maneuvered his cart toward the elevator, pressing the button for the 43rd floor, the crown jewel of Caldwell Industries, where the real power players conducted their business. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. What Ethan saw made every muscle in his body tense, a tension he hadn't felt in 3 years, not since he'd hung up his tactical vest and sworn he was done with that world forever. The reception area was empty. Too empty. The usual overnight receptionist, Karen, who always had butterscotch candies and stories about her grandchildren, wasn't at her desk. Her computer was on. Her purse was there. Her coffee was still steaming. But Karen was gone. Ethan's hand moved instinctively to his hip, reaching for a weapon that hadn't been there in years. He caught himself, forced his breathing to steady. "You're overthinking," he told himself. She probably just went to the bathroom. But the smell was wrong. Ethan had been trained to trust his instincts, and every instinct was screaming that something was off. There was a scent in the air, not cologne, not cleaning products. Adrenaline, fear, the metallic tang of it. And then, he heard it. A voice from the conference room, low and controlled. Nobody moves. Nobody makes a sound. And maybe you all get to see tomorrow. Ethan's blood went cold. He moved silently to the edge of the hallway, peering around the corner. What he saw confirmed his worst fears. 6 men, all dressed in black tactical gear faces, covered by ski masks. They'd clearly been planning this the way they'd positioned themselves, the professional-grade weapons, the communication headsets. This wasn't random. This was surgical. And in the center of it all, surrounded by her terrified executive team, was Amelia Caldwell. Her face was pale but composed. Even with a gun barrel inches from her head, she stood straight, her jaw set. One of the masked men, clearly the leader based on his body language, had his gloved hand gripped around her arm. "The encryption codes for the quantum processor," the leader demanded. "You're going to give them to us. Now." "I don't," Amelia started. "Don't." The word was a warning. "We know you have them. We know you carry them on a secure drive. We've been watching this company for 6 months, so let's not waste time with denials." Ethan counted quickly. 6 hostiles. Approximately 23 hostages, executives, assistants, a few security personnel who'd clearly been disarmed and forced to the ground. The gunman had covered the exits. Professional setup. Military training probably. Maybe ex-special forces gone mercenary. His mind automatically began calculating angles, weaknesses, opportunities. Then he stopped himself. "This isn't your job anymore," he thought. "You're a janitor. You have a daughter waiting at home. Call the cops. Let them handle it." His hand moved to his phone. "I'm going to count to 3, the leader said, pressing his gun harder against Amelia's temple. "And if I don't have those codes, we're going to start executing people. Let's begin with her." He gestured to a young woman, maybe 25, who was crying silently in the corner. An intern, probably. Her whole life ahead of her. "No, please," the woman sobbed. 1. Call the cops. Ethan's rational mind insisted. This isn't your fight. But his fingers were already loosening the tie on his cleaning cart, mentally inventorying what he had: a mop, a bucket cleaning solution, a wet floor sign, industrial disinfectant, a screwdriver for maintenance work, and his blue rubber gloves. Not much, but he'd worked with less. 2. Amelia's voice cut through the tension. "Wait, stop. I'll give you what you want." Smart woman. The leader almost sounded pleased. "But not like this," Amelia continued, and Ethan had to admire her courage. "Let these people go first. They don't know anything. They can't help you. Keep me. I'll cooperate. But let them leave." The leader laughed, a cold, mechanical sound. "You think this is a negotiation? You think you have any power here?" "I think," Amelia said, her voice steady, despite the gun at her head, "that killing everyone in this room creates evidence, witnesses, problems you don't need. You want the codes, fine. But the people who work for me have families, children. Please." For a moment, the room was silent. Then the leader backhanded her across the face. The sound of it echoed like a gunshot. Amelia stumbled, blood trickling from her split lip, but she didn't cry out. Around the room, people gasped, some screamed. "The next person who speaks out of turn dies," the leader announced calmly. "Am I clear?" That's when Ethan made his decision. Not because Amelia Caldwell was a billionaire, not because she was important, but because in her eyes, even bleeding and afraid, he saw the same fierce protectiveness he felt every time he looked at Lila. Amelia Caldwell was trying to save her people the same way he'd do anything to save his daughter. And he couldn't just stand there and watch. "I'm sorry, Lila," He thought touching the blue bracelet on his wrist, her gift to him made of yarn and beads with words she'd carefully spelled out, "Stay calm, come home." He took a breath and stepped into the doorway, pushing his cleaning cart ahead of him. "Sorry," he said quietly. "Didn't know anyone was still here. I'll come back." Every gun in the room swung toward him. "Who the hell are you?" the leader barked. Ethan kept his face neutral, submissive. "Maintenance. Just here to clean up. I can come back." "Get on the ground, now." Sure, no problem." Ethan slowly lowered himself to his knees, hands visible. Just another scared civilian. Nothing threatening, nothing to worry about. One of the gunmen approached, weapon trained on Ethan's chest. "You armed?" "It's a mop," Ethan said with a slight nervous laugh. "That's about it." The gunman kicked the cart aside, checking it. Satisfied, he turned back to the leader. "Just a janitor. Tie him up with the others." As rough hands grabbed Ethan's arms, he allowed himself to be dragged to the corner with the other hostages. But his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging everything: the positions of the gunmen, their weapons, Heckler & Koch, MP7s, expensive, effective, their communication pattern, military hand signals, probably former special forces, and most importantly, their blind spots. The leader returned his attention to Amelia. "Now, the codes." Amelia's eyes met Ethan's for just a fraction of a second. He saw something shift in her expression. Recognition maybe, or just desperate hope that someone, anyone might help. Then she looked away and began reciting a series of numbers. "Good," the leader said, gesturing to one of his men who pulled out a tablet and began typing. "Keep going." As Amelia continued, Ethan shifted slightly, testing his zip tie restraints. They were tight, but not expertly applied. Whoever had tied him was competent, but not specialized. He could work with that. Beside him, an older executive whispered, "We're going to die, aren't we?" "No," Ethan said softly. "You're not." "How can you possibly?" "I need you to trust me. When I move, I need everyone in this corner to drop to the floor. Can you spread the word quietly?" The man looked at him like he was insane. "You're a janitor." "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "I am. Can you spread the word or not?" Something in Ethan's voice, the absolute calm of it, made the executive nod slowly. Across the room, the leader was examining the tablet. "This better be real, Ms. Caldwell. If you're stalling..." "It's real," she said tiredly. "Check it yourself." "Oh, we will. And while we wait for verification..." He turned to his team. "Prep for extraction. We move in 5 minutes." That's when Amelia spoke up again. "You're taking me with you, aren't you?" The leader tilted his head. "You're a valuable asset. So yes. And everyone else?" "Loose ends," he said simply. The temperature in the room plummeted. People began crying, begging. One man tried to stand and was slammed back down with the butt of a rifle. "Please," Amelia said, and for the first time her voice cracked. "Please, you have what you want. There's no need." "There's every need," the leader interrupted. "The moment we walk out that door, you'll have every law enforcement agency in the country looking for us. But if there are no witnesses, if there's just a tragic break-in gone wrong, that buys us time. Lots of it." "You're insane," someone whispered. The leader shrugged. "I'm practical. There's a difference." He raised his weapon, pointing it at the young intern who'd been crying earlier. "We'll start with her. Make it quick." Ethan didn't think. He didn't plan. He just acted. The blue rubber glove on his right hand was already coated with the industrial-strength floor polish he'd quietly been working loose from his cart. He waited for the perfect moment when 3 of the 6 gunmen had their attention on the leader, when 2 were watching the exits, when 1 was checking his phone. Then he moved. His zip tie snapped as he torqued his wrists in a technique he'd taught federal agents years ago. In the same motion, he grabbed the wet floor sign from his overturned cart and hurled it like a frisbee. It caught the nearest gunman in the throat. Not lethal, but he went down, choking his weapon, clattering across the polished marble. "Get down!" Ethan roared to the hostages. They dropped. The room exploded into chaos. Ethan was already moving his body, remembering every drill, every training scenario, every hard-won lesson from his old life. He grabbed the fallen MP7, checked the chamber in one fluid motion, and rolled behind a marble pillar as bullets chewed into the spot where he'd been standing. "Who the hell is that?" the leader screamed. Ethan didn't answer. He was counting shots, calculating angles. 5 hostiles still standing, all trained, all dangerous, and him with one weapon, limited ammunition, and 23 civilians to protect. Just like old times. He popped up, fired 3 controlled bursts, and dropped back down as return fire shattered the marble above his head. 2 of his shots found their mark, leg wounds deliberate. He wasn't trying to kill, he was trying to neutralize. 2 down, 4 to go. "Secure the woman," the leader commanded. One of the gunmen grabbed Amelia, using her as a shield as he backed toward the exit. Amelia struggled, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't risk a shot not with Amelia in the line of fire. He needed a different approach. That's when he spotted it, the fire suppression system overhead. The leader saw his glance and laughed. "You think you're going to set off the sprinklers? Go ahead. Water doesn't stop bullets." "No," Ethan agreed, his voice perfectly calm. "But it makes marble floors slippery." He fired a single shot into the sprinkler head. Cold water erupted from the ceiling, instantly flooding the polished marble floor. And Ethan's earlier work, carefully spreading floor polish in strategic locations, while everyone had been distracted, turned the executive conference room into an ice skating rink. The gunman holding Amelia tried to back up, and his feet went out from under him. Amelia broke free, hitting the ground as Ethan moved. He slid across the wet floor with practiced ease, driving his shoulder into another gunman's knees. They both went down, but Ethan was trained for chaos. His opponent wasn't ready. 3 seconds later, that gunman was unconscious. 3 down, 3 to go. But now the leader had adapted, dropping to one knee for stability and taking aim directly at Ethan's center mass. "I don't know who you are," the leader said, his voice cold with professional respect, "but you just made a very expensive mistake." Time seemed to slow. Ethan saw the man's finger tightening on the trigger. He was too far to reach, too exposed to dodge. And if he died, these people died. Lila would wake up tomorrow without a father. But Amelia Caldwell wasn't done fighting. Soaking wet, bleeding, terrified but not broken, she grabbed one of Ethan's dropped cleaning supplies and hurled it with everything she had. The bottle of industrial disinfectant hit the leader square in the face mask, the caustic liquid splashing through the fabric. He screamed, clawing at his eyes. Ethan didn't waste the opening. He closed the distance in 3 strides and delivered a strike that ended the threat without ending the life. The leader crumpled. 4 down. The remaining 2 gunmen exchanged glances. They'd gone from a controlled hostage situation to a disaster zone in under 60 seconds. One of them was already edging toward the emergency exit. Ethan raised the MP7, his voice carrying across the flooded room. "You can walk away, right now. Leave the weapons, leave your comms. Walk away and you'll live to regret your career choices." "And if we don't," one of them challenged. "Then you'll learn why I retired," Ethan said quietly. "And trust me, you don't want that lesson." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then both men carefully placed their weapons on the ground and ran for the exit, leaving their unconscious teammates behind. The room fell silent, except for the steady spray of water from the broken sprinkler and the sound of people crying in relief. Ethan lowered the weapon, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. He looked around at the terrified faces, the wounded, the survivors. Then his eyes found Amelia Caldwell, sitting in a puddle of water on her expensive marble floor, staring at him like she'd just seen a ghost. "You're not a janitor," she whispered. Ethan's smile was sad. Actually, ma'am, that's exactly what I am. But a long time ago. He trailed off, then shook his head. Police are probably 90 seconds out. You should check on your people. He turned to leave. Wait, Amelia called out, struggling to her feet. I don't even know your name. It's on my name tag, ma'am, Ethan said gently, already moving toward the service elevator. He needed to disappear before official questions started, before his past came back to haunt his present, before someone realized the janitor shouldn't have moved like that, fought like that. Known things only federal tactical instructors should know. Before someone looked too closely at why a single father cleaning floors at night had just neutralized a professional kidnapping team. Ethan, Amelia shouted. Thank you. But he was already gone, vanishing into the service corridors he knew by heart, leaving behind only wet footprints and questions no one could answer. By the time the police stormed the building Ethan was in, his beat-up Honda Civic driving through the rain toward his small apartment in Queens, toward Lila, who was sleeping peacefully, who would never know her daddy had just saved 23 lives. He touched the blue bracelet on his wrist. I'm coming home, sweetheart, he whispered, just like I promised. Behind him, the skyline of Manhattan glittered with emergency lights, and somewhere in that chaos, Amelia Caldwell was giving statements to police. Her mind racing with one question. Who was that man? The rain hammered against Ethan's windshield as he navigated the late-night traffic toward Queens, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every siren in the distance made his heart rate spike. He kept checking his rearview mirror, half expecting to see flashing lights, federal agents, someone who'd put the pieces together too quickly. But there was nothing. Just rain and darkness, and the city that never slept. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor who watched Lila on late shifts. Everything okay? Heard sirens. Lila's sleeping like an angel. No rush. Ethan's hands were still trembling as he typed back. All good. Home in 20. Thank you. 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, he'd walk through that door, check on his daughter, and pretend tonight never happened. Pretend he was still just a janitor. Pretend the past 3 years hadn't just shattered in 60 seconds of muscle memory and training he couldn't forget, no matter how hard he tried. Stay calm. Come home. He whispered, touching Lila's bracelet. His mantra. His promise. But calm was getting harder to hold on to. Across the city, Amelia Caldwell sat wrapped in a thermal blanket, despite the building's climate control, watching detectives photograph evidence and paramedics treat minor injuries. Her executive team had been escorted to various rooms for statements. The bodies of the unconscious attackers, now zip-tied and under guard, were being processed, and everyone kept asking her the same question. Ms. Caldwell, can you describe the individual who intervened? Detective Sarah Morrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with silver streaking through her dark hair, sat across from Amelia in what used to be a pristine conference room and was now a crime scene. I already told the first 3 officers, Amelia said, exhaustion bleeding into her voice. I know, and I'm asking again because nothing you've said makes sense. Morrison flipped through her notes. 6 armed mercenaries, professional-grade weapons, military-level coordination, and according to you and 17 witnesses, they were neutralized by a janitor armed with cleaning supplies. I know how it sounds. Do you... Morrison leaned forward. Because it sounds impossible. It sounds like someone with extensive tactical training. Special forces, federal agent, not someone who mops floors for minimum wage. Amelia's jaw tightened. I don't know what he was. I only know what he did. He saved 23 lives. Ethan Cole. Morrison read from a tablet. 42 years old, single father, daughter named Lila, age 7. He's worked night maintenance for Caldwell Industries for 3 years. Clean background check. No military service on record. No law enforcement history. No advanced training of any kind. She looked up. So either our records are incomplete or you're mistaken about what happened tonight. I'm not mistaken. Amelia's voice was steel. That man moved like he'd done this 1,000 times. The way he assessed the room, the way he controlled the situation. Detective, I've hired personal security teams that weren't that good. Morrison studied her for a long moment. What did he say to you before he left? Amelia closed her eyes, remembering. He said police were 90 seconds out, that I should check on my people, and when I asked his name, he said it was on his name tag. That's it. That's it. Then he vanished into the service corridors like he knew every inch of this building. Amelia opened her eyes. Can I ask you something, Detective? Go ahead. You're running his name through databases right now, aren't you? Federal databases? Looking for sealed records, classified information. Things that wouldn't show up on a standard background check. Morrison's silence was answer enough. When you find something, Amelia said quietly, I want to know. That man risked his life for mine. I deserve to understand why. Miles away, Ethan finally pulled into the parking lot of his modest apartment building. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. He sat in the car for a moment, forcing his breathing to steady, checking his reflection in the mirror. No visible injuries, no blood. Nothing to alarm Lila if she woke up. Just Dad home from another boring night of cleaning offices. He grabbed his keys and headed inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time to the 3rd floor. Mrs. Chen opened her door before he could knock, her kind wrinkled face creasing with concern. Ethan, you look exhausted. Long night. He managed a smile. How was she? Perfect as always. Did her homework, ate her vegetables, most of them, and only asked for 2 bedtime stories instead of the usual 4. Mrs. Chen handed him Lila's backpack. She made you something at school. Wouldn't let me peek. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I don't know what I'd do without you. Nonsense. That little girl is a joy. She patted his arm. Get some rest, dear. You look like you've been fighting dragons. If only she knew how close to the truth that was. Inside his apartment, Ethan moved quietly through the small living room, decorated with Lila's artwork and photos of the 2 of them at various parks and museums, and into her bedroom. She was sprawled across her twin bed, her curls a wild halo on the pillow, one arm wrapped around a stuffed elephant named Mr. Trunk. Ethan knelt beside her bed, watching her breathe. In, out, safe, alive. Unaware that her father had just done something that could unravel their entire carefully constructed life. I'm sorry, baby, he whispered. I'm so sorry. He kissed her forehead and retreated to the living room, finally allowing himself to collapse onto the couch. His hands were shaking again. Adrenaline crash. He knew the signs, knew what was coming. The replay loop in his mind, analyzing every decision, every movement, every fraction of a second where things could have gone catastrophically wrong. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan stared at it, his training screaming warnings. Then he answered. Mr. Cole. The voice was male calm, familiar in a way that made Ethan's blood run cold. It's been a long time. Director Hastings. Ethan kept his voice neutral. I'm surprised it took you this long to call. We've been monitoring the situation at Caldwell Industries. Impressive work, though I seem to recall you swearing you'd never do this again. I don't work for you anymore. No, you don't. There was a pause. But you still have the skills, still have the instincts. Tonight proved that. Tonight was a mistake. Was it? Hastings asked. 23 people are alive because you were in that building. That's not a mistake, Ethan. That's who you are. Who I was, Ethan corrected. I'm a father now. I have a daughter who needs me to come home every night. I can't be that person anymore. Can't or won't? Ethan closed his eyes. Is there a difference? There is when people like tonight's attackers are still out there. When the skills you have could save lives. Hastings let that sink in. The FBI is going to want to interview you. Detective Morrison is already asking questions. Your cover as just a janitor is compromised. Then I'll move. Change names. Disappear. With a 7-year-old daughter, uproot her entire life. Pull her out of school, away from her friends. Hastings' voice softened. Ethan running isn't the answer. It never was. What do you want from me? I want you to come in. Talk to us. Let us help you manage this situation before it spirals. No. Ethan. I said no. I left that world for a reason. Sarah died because of that world. Because I was never home, never there when she needed me, always chasing the next mission, the next threat. Ethan's voice cracked. I won't make Lila pay that price too. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Hastings said, I'm sorry about Sarah. I truly am. But you can't hide from who you are forever. Watch me. Ethan hung up and immediately powered off his phone. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the storm was just beginning. The next morning, Amelia stood in her newly assigned temporary office. The executive floor was still an active crime scene, scrolling through news alerts on her tablet. The story was everywhere. Billionaire CEO saved by mysterious janitor. Who is the hero of Caldwell Industries? Viral video security footage shows incredible rescue. Someone had leaked the security footage. Grainy black and white, but clear enough to show Ethan moving through those armed men like water flowing around stones, efficient, unstoppable, impossibly calm. The video had 17 million views and climbing. Her assistant Marcus, a nervous young man who'd been in the room during the attack and could barely make eye contact, now knocked hesitantly. Ms. Caldwell, your 10 o'clock is here. Who's my 10 o'clock? I didn't have anything scheduled. FBI. They said it was urgent. Amelia's pulse quickened. Send them in. 2 agents entered, a woman and a man, both in dark suits that screamed federal authority. The woman extended her hand first. Ms. Caldwell, I'm Special Agent Rebecca Torres. This is Special Agent James Park. We're from the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division. Of course, please sit. Amelia gestured to the chairs across from her desk. I assume this is about last night. Partially. Torres pulled out a folder. We're investigating the attack itself, the mercenaries, their employer, the attempted theft of your quantum processor codes. But we're also interested in Ethan Cole. There it was. The name that had been echoing in Amelia's mind since she'd watched him disappear into those service corridors. What about him? She asked carefully. What do you know about Mr. Cole? Park asked. Only what I've learned in the last 12 hours. He's worked for my company for 3 years. Night maintenance, single father, quiet, kept to himself. Amelia leaned forward. But you're not here to tell me things I already know, are you? Torres and Park exchanged glances. Then Torres opened her folder and slid a photograph across the desk. It was Ethan, but younger, maybe 35, with shorter hair and eyes that didn't carry the same weariness. He was wearing tactical gear and standing with a group of similarly equipped men and women. Behind them, barely visible, was a sign, Federal Tactical Training Center, Quantico. Ethan Cole, Torres said, was one of the most skilled tactical instructors the federal government ever trained. He specialized in high-risk extractions, hostage negotiations, and counter-terrorism operations. For 8 years, he taught FBI agents, Secret Service, even some Special Forces units, how to handle impossible situations. Amelia stared at the photograph, her mind reeling. Why didn't this show up in his background check? Because he requested his records be sealed when he left the program. It's rare, but not unheard of usually when someone's safety is at risk, or when they need to completely separate from their past work. Park leaned back. In Ethan's case, it was personal. His wife died in a car accident 3 years ago while he was overseas on a classified training mission. He came home to a funeral and a traumatized 6-month-old daughter. Amelia's throat tightened. Lila. Yes. He requested immediate separation from federal service, asked for all records to be classified, and vanished into civilian life. We knew he was working somewhere in New York, but we respected his privacy, until last night. Last night changed everything, Amelia said quietly. Last night reminded us that some skills don't disappear just because you want them to. Torres pulled out another document. The men who attacked your building. We've identified 3 of them, former Eastern European Special Forces. They were hired by a competitor of yours. We're still building the case, but we have enough to make arrests. That's good news. It is, but it also means you're still a target. These people invested significant resources in trying to steal your technology. They're not going to just walk away because the first attempt failed. Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. What are you suggesting? Enhanced security, federal protection if necessary, and... Torres hesitated. We'd like to bring Ethan Cole in for consultation. His expertise could help us understand the threat profile and... No. Both agents looked surprised. Ms. Caldwell. That man left that life to protect his daughter, to give her a normal childhood, to be there for her in ways he couldn't be before. Amelia stood, her voice firm. I won't be the reason he gets pulled back in. I won't be the reason that little girl loses her father to the job that already cost her mother. With respect, Park said, that might not be your choice to make. Cole's actions last night have already made waves. The video is viral. People are asking questions. His cover, as it were, is blown. Then help him, Amelia said. You're the FBI. Help him maintain his privacy, protect his daughter. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Torres studied her for a long moment. You care about him, about someone you barely know. He risked everything to save me and my people. That earns more than just gratitude. It earns loyalty. Amelia's eyes hardened. So I'll ask you again. Can you help him, or are you just here to drag him back into a life he fought hard to escape? The agents exchanged another look. Then Torres nodded slowly. We can try. But Ms. Caldwell, you should know Ethan Cole is going to be contacted by a lot of people in the coming days. Private security firms, government agencies, media outlets. Everyone's going to want a piece of the hero janitor. The best thing you can do is give him space and let him decide how to handle this. What if he needs help? Then be there for him, as an employer, as someone who understands what it's like to have the whole world watching. Torres stood, handing Amelia a business card. And if he's willing to talk to us, just talk, we'd appreciate the introduction. But we won't force it. After they left, Amelia sat alone in her office staring at the photograph Torres had left behind. Ethan Cole, tactical instructor, federal expert, the man who'd taught others how to save lives. The man who now spent his nights mopping floors so he could spend his days raising his daughter. She picked up her phone and called her head of security. Gerald, I need you to do something for me, and I need absolute discretion. Across town, Ethan was making pancakes in his small kitchen, while Lila sat at their wobbly table swinging her legs and coloring a picture of what appeared to be a superhero with a mop. Daddy, why are there so many cars outside? Ethan's hand froze mid-flip. What do you mean, sweetheart? Look. Lila pointed to the window. Ethan moved to the glass and felt his stomach drop. 3 news vans parked on the street. Reporters with cameras. A crowd gathering. They'd found him. Of course they'd found him. The building had records. The viral video had his face. It was only a matter of time. Daddy. Lila's voice was small, worried. Are you in trouble? Ethan forced a smile and returned to the stove. No, baby. Just... Some people want to ask me questions about work. It's boring adult stuff. About last night, Mrs. Chen said there was an emergency. Something like that. He plated her pancakes, adding the smiley face made of blueberries she loved. But everything's okay now. I promise. A knock at the door made them both jump. Stay here, Ethan said, moving toward the entrance. He checked the peephole expecting reporters. Instead, he saw a woman in a business suit holding a briefcase flanked by two professional-looking security personnel. He opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Cole, my name is Jennifer Hassan. I'm the general counsel for Caldwell Industries. Ms. Caldwell sent me. I don't want to talk to anyone." She anticipated that, which is why I'm not here to ask you questions. I'm here to help. Hassan gestured to the growing crowd below. "May I come in? Just for 5 minutes. Then I'll leave if you want me to." Ethan hesitated, then stepped aside. Hassan entered quickly, her security team remaining in the hallway. She took in the modest apartment, the child's artwork on the walls, the breakfast on the table, Lila watching with wide eyes from her seat. "You must be Lila," Hassan said warmly. "Your daddy's told everyone at work what an amazing artist you are." Lila beamed. "Really? Really?" Hassan looked at Ethan. "Mr. Cole, I'll be brief. Ms. Caldwell is concerned about your privacy and your family's safety. The media attention is only going to intensify. We'd like to offer you and Lila temporary accommodations somewhere secure, private, away from cameras and questions until this settles down." "I can't afford." "It's not a request for payment. It's a thank you for what you did." Hassan pulled out a folder from her briefcase. "We have a company apartment in a secure building in Brooklyn. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, 24-hour security. You and Lila can stay there as long as you need. No cameras, no reporters, no questions." Ethan looked at his daughter, who was watching him with those trusting gray eyes that saw him as safety, as home, as everything she had left in the world. "Why?" he asked Hassan quietly. "Why would she do this?" Hassan's expression softened. "Because she knows what it's like to have your life turned upside down by circumstances beyond your control. And because she said, and I quote, 'That man gave me back my life. The least I can do is protect his.'" Ethan felt something crack in his chest, not breaking, but opening. A door he'd kept locked for 3 years, because trusting anyone, accepting help from anyone, meant admitting he couldn't do this alone. "Daddy." Lila climbed down from her chair and took his hand. "Are we going somewhere?" He looked down at her, at the blue bracelet on his wrist, at the life they'd built in this small apartment, where they'd learned to be a family of 2 instead of 3. Then he looked at the window, at the cameras pointed at their home, at the world that was no longer willing to let him stay invisible. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said softly. "We're going somewhere safe. Will Mr. Trunk come too?" "Mr. Trunk goes everywhere you go. You know that." Lila smiled, then looked up at Hassan. "Do they have pancakes where we're going?" Hassan smiled back. "I'll make sure of it." As Ethan began packing their essential belongings, which wasn't much because they'd learned to travel light in their grief, his phone buzzed again, another unknown number. He almost ignored it, then saw the text preview. "This is Amelia Caldwell. I'm sorry for the intrusion, but I needed you to know you're not alone in this. Whatever you need, however I can help, just ask. You saved my life. Let me help protect yours." Ethan stared at the message for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 3 years, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world who understood that heroism wasn't about seeking glory, it was about showing up when it mattered most. And sometimes accepting help was just as brave as giving it. The secure apartment in Brooklyn turned out to be far more than Ethan had expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the East River. The kitchen had marble countertops that gleamed under soft pendant lights, and Lila's new bedroom was twice the size of their entire living room back in Queens. She'd stood in the doorway hugging Mr. Trunk, her eyes wide with wonder. "Daddy, is this really ours?" "Just for a while, sweetheart," Ethan had said, setting down their duffel bags. "Until things calm down." That had been 4 days ago. Things had not calmed down. The viral video now had over 40 million views. News outlets were running 24-hour coverage dissecting every frame of the security footage. Social media had dubbed him the janitor hero and Captain Mop. 3 book publishers had sent offers through Caldwell Industries' legal team. 2 movie studios were already in a bidding war for the rights to his story, a story they didn't even know. And every morning, Ethan woke up feeling like he was living someone else's life. He stood at the window now, coffee cooling in his hand, watching the sunrise paint the river in shades of gold and amber. Behind him, Lila was still asleep, her breathing soft and even. The apartment's security system showed green lights across the board. No reporters had found this location. No cameras pointed at these windows. They were safe. So why did he feel more exposed than ever? His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Saw you on the news again. So proud. Lila's school called asking questions. I told them you'd moved temporarily. Hope that's okay. Ethan closed his eyes. Lila's school. Of course. He'd have to deal with that eventually. Explain to her teachers why photographers were camping outside their old building. Figure out how to give his daughter a normal life when nothing about this situation was normal. Another text, this one from Jennifer Hassan. Ms. Caldwell would like to meet with you today. Her office 2 p.m. No pressure, no media, just a conversation. She understands if you decline. Ethan stared at the message. He'd been avoiding Amelia Caldwell for 4 days, despite her texts offering help, despite her providing this sanctuary. Because meeting her meant acknowledging what had happened, meant confronting the reality that his carefully constructed civilian life was crumbling. But he also knew he couldn't hide forever. He texted back, I'll be there. Thank you. At precisely 2 o'clock that afternoon, Ethan stepped off the elevator onto Caldwell Industries' newly reopened executive floor. The marble had been cleaned, the broken sprinkler replaced, the bullet holes in the walls patched and painted over. You'd never know a war had been fought here just days ago. Except everyone who saw him knew. Employees stopped mid-conversation to stare. A young woman actually gasped. A man whispered to his colleague, pointing. Ethan kept his eyes forward, his expression neutral, but he felt every gaze like a weight pressing down on his shoulders. Mr. Cole. Marcus, Amelia's assistant, appeared at his elbow, looking both awed and terrified. Thank you for coming. Ms. Caldwell is waiting in her office. And, thank you. For what you did. I was in that room. You saved my life. Ethan met his eyes. You're welcome. How are you holding up? Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I'm in therapy now, having nightmares, but I'm alive to have them so. He managed a weak smile. This way, please. Amelia's office was understated compared to what Ethan had expected. Yes, there were awards on the walls and a view that probably cost more than most people's houses, but the desk was covered with actual work reports, prototypes, sticky notes with handwritten reminders. This was a woman who did things, not just manage them. She stood when he entered, and Ethan saw the fading bruise on her cheekbone where the kidnapper had struck her. She'd covered it with makeup, but he'd seen enough injuries to recognize the shadow underneath. Mr. Cole. She extended her hand. Thank you for coming. It's just Ethan. He shook her hand, noting the firm grip, the calluses on her palm. Not just a boardroom executive then, someone who worked with her hands. Then it's just Amelia. She gestured to a chair. Please sit. Can I get you anything, coffee, water? I'm fine, thank you. They sat in the kind of silence that precedes important conversations, both of them sizing each other up, trying to figure out how to navigate this strange new dynamic between someone who saved a life and someone whose life was saved. Amelia spoke first. I've been trying to figure out how to thank you. What words could possibly be adequate for what you did? And I've realized there aren't any. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You risked your life. You put yourself between armed killers and 23 people you didn't even know. You saved us. Her voice cracked slightly. You saved me. Ethan looked away, uncomfortable. I did what anyone would have done. No. The word was sharp. No, you didn't. Anyone else would have hidden, would have called the police and prayed. You moved like... She stopped, choosing her words carefully. The FBI told me about your background, about who you were before. Ethan's jaw tightened. I asked for that to be sealed. They didn't violate your privacy. They told me the minimum, that you were federal law enforcement, that you left to protect your daughter. That's all I know. That's all I need to know. Amelia leaned forward. But it made me understand why you've been avoiding me. Why you disappeared. You don't want this attention. You want to go back to being invisible. I want to go back to being a father, Ethan corrected quietly. That's all I am now. All I want to be. I understand that, and I want to help you get there. She pulled out a folder. Which is why I'm offering you something I hope you'll consider. Ethan tensed. I'm not coming back to work for you. If this is about... It's not a job offer. Not in the way you think. Amelia opened the folder. Ethan, my company has a problem. We've always had security, but what happened last week exposed serious vulnerabilities. Not in our technology, in our people, our protocols, our entire approach to safety. We thought money could buy protection. We were wrong. You need better security contractors. I need someone who understands that security isn't about intimidation or firepower. It's about prevention awareness, empowering people to protect themselves. She slid a document across the desk. I'm creating a new position, Director of Human Risk and Security Reform. The job isn't to be a bodyguard or carry a weapon. It's to redesign how we think about safety from the ground up. Training programs, emergency protocols, creating a culture where everyone from executives to maintenance staff knows how to recognize threats and respond appropriately. Ethan picked up the document, scanning it. The salary made his eyes widen. The benefits package could change Lila's entire life. Private school, college fund, healthcare that didn't make him choose between rent and medicine. This is generous, he said carefully, but I'm not qualified for... You're the most qualified person I've ever met, Amelia interrupted. You taught federal agents how to handle crisis situations. You've forgotten more about security than most experts will ever learn. And more importantly, you understand the human element. You didn't just neutralize threats, you protected people. There's a difference. There's also my daughter to consider. This kind of position would mean long hours travel potentially, flexible schedule, work from home when needed. Lila's school schedule takes priority. No travel unless you choose to. And I'm including a provision for a full-time nanny if you want one, or childcare stipend if you don't. Amelia's expression softened. Ethan, I'm not trying to pull you away from your daughter. I'm trying to give you a career that lets you be present for her while using the skills you have to make others safer. Skills you clearly can't ignore anyway. The truth of that hit harder than Ethan wanted to admit. He'd spent 3 years pretending he was just a janitor, just a dad, just someone ordinary. But the moment those gunmen had appeared, he'd moved. No hesitation, no choice. The training had taken over like breathing. I need time, he said, to think about this, to figure out what's best for Lila. Take all the time you need. The offer stands indefinitely. Amelia paused. But Ethan, whether you take this job or not, I want you to know something. What you did wasn't just brave. It reminded me what true leadership looks like. Not the person with the biggest title or the corner office, the person who steps up when everyone else steps back. That's the kind of person I want at Caldwell Industries. That's the kind of person I want my daughter to know exists in the world. Ethan's head snapped up. You have a daughter. Emma, she's 5. A smile crossed Amelia's face, soft and vulnerable. She's with her father this week. We share custody. But when I told her the story of what happened about the brave man who helped Mommy, she drew you a picture. She pulled out a crayon drawing from her desk drawer. She insisted I give it to you. The drawing showed a stick figure with a mop standing next to a woman in a dress. Above them, in a child's careful lettering, "Thank you for saving my mommy." Ethan's throat closed. He thought about Lila's drawing, the one in his wallet, the man with the mop protecting the princess. Two little girls both trying to understand heroism through the only lens they had, love. "Tell Emma thank you," he managed, "and that her mommy is very brave too." "I will." Amelia stood extending her hand again. "Think about the offer, Ethan. But more than that, think about what you want your life to look like. Not what you think it should be, not what's safe, what you actually want. For you and for Lila." As Ethan rode the elevator down, Emma's drawing clutched in his hand. His mind was racing. What did he want? For 3 years, he'd only wanted survival. Get through each day. Keep Lila safe. Don't think about the past. Don't think about Sarah. Don't think about the man he used to be. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe running from who he was meant running from who he could be. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and Ethan stopped dead. Lila was there sitting in one of the sleek modern chairs, her legs swinging coloring in a book, while Jennifer Hassan sat beside her looking apologetic. "Daddy!" Lila jumped up and ran to him. "Mrs. Hassan said we could visit. Are you surprised?" "Very surprised." Ethan shot Hassan a questioning look. She stood gathering her briefcase. Lila's school called. There were photographers outside. The principal thought it best to dismiss her early, and when I couldn't reach you, I made an executive decision. I hope that's okay. It wasn't okay. It was his worst fear, his daughter being pulled into this circus, her childhood being invaded by cameras and questions and things she was too young to understand. But before he could respond, Lila tugged his hand. "Daddy, everyone at school saw the video. They said you're a superhero. Tommy Martinez said you're the coolest dad ever, and usually Tommy says mean things, so that's really good." Ethan knelt down to her level. "Lila, I'm not a superhero. I'm just your dad." "That's what makes you super," she said, with the simple logic of childhood. "You're my dad, and you help people, like firefighters and doctors." From across the lobby, a voice called out, "Excuse me, are you Ethan Cole?" Ethan's protective instincts kicked in immediately. He stood putting himself between Lila and the approaching woman, middle-aged, wearing scrubs, her eyes red-rimmed. "I don't want to bother you," the woman said quickly. My daughter works here. Emily Chen. She was in that conference room. She's 24 years old, and she almost died and you saved her." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for bringing my baby home." Ethan felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. "Emily's the one who deserves credit. She stayed calm. She helped others. You risked your life for strangers," the woman interrupted. "That's not just anything. That's everything." She pressed a hand to her heart. "Thank you. From a mother to a father, thank you." She walked away before Ethan could respond, leaving him standing in the lobby with his daughter's hand in his, and something breaking open in his chest. "Daddy, why is that lady crying?" Lila whispered. "Because she's grateful, sweetheart." "For what you did?" "Yeah." Lila was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, "At school, Mrs. Peterson told us about heroes. She said heroes are people who help others even when it's scary. Is that what you did?" Ethan knelt again, looking into his daughter's eyes. Sarah's eyes full of intelligence and kindness, and a belief that the world could be good if people chose to make it that way. "I did what I hope anyone would do," he said. "I saw people who needed help, and I helped them. Because that's what good people do." "Yes." "Then I want to be good like you," Lila said seriously. "When I grow up, I want to help people too." And in that moment, Ethan realized something he'd been too afraid to acknowledge. His daughter wasn't going to learn about heroism from him hiding. She was going to learn it from watching how he chose to live, from seeing whether he ran from who he was or embraced it, from understanding that being good meant showing up even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That evening, back in the Brooklyn apartment, Ethan sat at the dining table with Amelia's job offer spread out in front of him. Lila was in her room supposedly doing homework, but probably drawing more pictures of stick figure heroes. His phone rang. Director Hastings. Ethan almost ignored it. Then he answered. "I heard about Amelia Caldwell's offer," Hastings said without preamble. "It's a good one. You should take it. You're monitoring my private conversations now." "I'm looking out for someone who used to be one of my best instructors," Hastings corrected. "Ethan, you've spent 3 years punishing yourself for Sarah's death, working a job beneath your abilities, hiding your skills, pretending you're something you're not. When are you going to forgive yourself?" "I wasn't there when she needed me," Ethan said, his voice rough. "I was overseas training agents for scenarios that never happened while my wife drove home alone in a rainstorm and a drunk driver crossed the center line. What's there to forgive? The fact that you're human, that you can't be everywhere, that sometimes terrible things happen to good people and it's not anyone's fault." Hastings paused. "Sarah wouldn't want you living like this. She'd want you using your gifts, being the man she fell in love with, the one who believed protecting people mattered. I am protecting someone, my daughter, by teaching her that your past is something shameful, something to hide from." Hastings' voice gentled. "Or by showing her that when life knocks you down, you get back up, that your scars don't define you, how you carry them does." After Hastings hung up, Ethan sat in the silence, the city lights flickering through the windows like distant stars. He thought about Sarah, about the last conversation they'd had before he'd left for that training mission. "Go save the world, hero," she'd said, kissing him goodbye, while cradling baby Lila. "We'll be here when you get back." But she wasn't, and he'd spent 3 years believing that if he'd just been there, just stayed home, just chosen differently, she'd still be alive. Except he couldn't change the past. He could only choose what came next. Ethan picked up his phone and typed a message to Amelia. "I'd like to discuss the position further. Can we meet tomorrow? And I have one condition. Whatever I do, however I help my daughter, comes first. Always." The response came within seconds. "Always. That's not a condition, that's a requirement. Breakfast 9 a.m. I'll bring coffee." Ethan smiled despite himself. "Deal." He walked to Lila's room and found her exactly as predicted, surrounded by drawings of stick figures helping other stick figures. One showed a man in a janitor uniform standing between danger and people. Another showed the same man in a suit teaching others. A third showed him holding a little girl's hand with a sun shining overhead, and the word happy spelled out in careful letters. "Which one's real daddy?" Lila asked, looking up. "Which one are you?" Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, gathering his daughter into his arms. "All of them, sweetheart. I'm a dad. I'm someone who helps people. I'm someone who's still figuring things out. People aren't just one thing. Like how I'm a kid and an artist and also really good at math." "Exactly like that." Lila snuggled against him. "I'm glad you helped those people. Mrs. Chen said you're a hero. Are you?" Ethan thought about that word, hero. He'd spent his career training people who ran toward danger, who put others first, who made impossible choices in impossible situations. He'd never considered himself one of them. He was just the instructor, the guy who taught the techniques, who stayed behind while others went into the field. But maybe heroism wasn't about the title or the recognition. Maybe it was about the choice you made when everything was on the line. The decision to step up instead of back, to risk comfort for someone else's safety. Maybe it was about showing your daughter that being afraid didn't mean being weak, it meant being human. And being human meant you got to choose every single day what kind of person you wanted to be. "I don't know if I'm a hero," he told Lila honestly. "But I'm trying to be a good person, and I'm trying to be the best dad I can be for you." "You're already the best," Lila said with absolute certainty. Then she yawned. Can you stay until I fall asleep? Always. As Ethan sat there in the soft glow of Lila's nightlight watching his daughter drift off to sleep, he thought about tomorrow. About meeting Amelia. About the possibility of stepping back into a version of himself he'd thought was gone forever. Not the same man, but someone new. Someone shaped by loss and love and the fierce determination to make his daughter's world safer. Someone who understood that you didn't have to choose between protecting your family and helping others. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was both. Outside the window, Brooklyn hummed with life. Somewhere in Manhattan, Amelia Caldwell was probably still working, trying to rebuild her company into something better than before. Somewhere in Queens, Mrs. Chen was watching the news, proud of the quiet man she'd known, who turned out to be extraordinary. Somewhere in the world, Emily Chen's mother was hugging her daughter a little tighter, grateful for second chances. And in a secure apartment overlooking the East River, a single father who'd once taught heroes how to be brave was finally learning to be one himself. Not for the cameras, not for the recognition, but for the little girl sleeping peacefully beside him, dreaming of a world where good people showed up when it mattered most. Where invisible didn't mean unimportant. Where calm didn't mean weak. Where a man with a mop and a father's love could change everything. The coffee shop Amelia chose was tucked into a quiet corner of Brooklyn Heights, the kind of place where locals read newspapers and nobody cared about billionaire CEOs or viral videos. Ethan arrived 10 minutes early, a habit from his old life that he couldn't shake, and found Amelia already there sitting at a corner table with 2 steaming cups and a folder that looked significantly thicker than the one she'd shown him yesterday. She stood when she saw him, and Ethan noticed she wasn't wearing the power suit and heels. Instead, she had on jeans, a simple sweater, and minimal makeup that didn't quite hide the exhaustion around her eyes. This wasn't CEO Amelia Caldwell. This was just Amelia, a woman who probably hadn't slept well since armed men had invaded her building. "You're early," she said with a slight smile. "So are you." "Hazard of the job. I haven't slept past 5:30 in 15 years. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Black coffee, right? Jennifer mentioned you took it straight. Your assistant is very observant. That's why I hired her." Amelia waited until he sat before continuing. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." Ethan wrapped his hands around the warm cup. "I wasn't sure either, but my daughter drew a picture last night, me teaching people how to help each other, and I realized she sees things more clearly than I do sometimes. Kids have a way of doing that." Amelia's expression softened. "Emma asked me yesterday why bad people wanted to hurt Mommy. I didn't know how to explain corporate espionage and industrial theft to a 5-year-old, so I told her sometimes people make wrong choices because they want things that aren't theirs. She said we should teach them to share better." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. If only it were that simple. "Right." Amelia took a sip of her coffee. "But maybe that's the point. We complicate things as adults. We build walls and protocols and security systems, and we forget the fundamental truth. Most problems happen because people don't feel seen, don't feel valued, don't feel like they matter. Your daughter gets that. Emma gets that. Maybe we should listen to them more." Ethan studied her across the table. This wasn't the woman he'd seen on magazine covers or in boardroom videos. This was someone still processing trauma, still trying to understand how her world had nearly ended on a random Tuesday night. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "Really?" Amelia blinked clearly, not expecting the question. I don't know. Functioning. I can't sleep without checking the locks 3 times. I nearly had a panic attack yesterday when someone dropped a book in the conference room. My therapist says it's normal. PTSD takes time to process. But I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to be strong, unshakable. I'm supposed to—" She stopped, pressing her fingers to her eyes. "Sorry. You didn't come here to listen to me fall apart. Actually, I think that's exactly why I came." Ethan leaned forward. "Amelia, you had a gun to your head. You watched people you care about face death. You were struck, threatened, traumatized. Being strong doesn't mean pretending that didn't happen. It means acknowledging it did and choosing to keep going anyway. Is that what you did after your wife? The question hung in the air between them. Ethan's first instinct was to deflect, to change the subject, to retreat behind the walls he'd built. But something about the way Amelia was looking at him, not with pity or curiosity, but with genuine understanding, made him answer honestly. No, he admitted. I ran. I buried everything. The grief, the guilt, the person I used to be. I told myself I was protecting Lila, but really I was protecting myself from feeling anything. It took 3 years and one impossible situation to realize you can't outrun who you are. You can only decide what you do with it. Amelia nodded slowly. That's what this job offer is really about, isn't it? Not just security reform. You're asking me to figure out what I do with what happened. I'm asking both of us to figure that out. Ethan gestured to the folder. So tell me what you're really proposing. Not the official job description, what you actually want to build. Amelia opened the folder, and Ethan saw pages of handwritten notes, sketches, ideas, scrawled in the margins. This wasn't a corporate initiative drafted by lawyers and HR. This was personal. When I started Caldwell Industries 12 years ago, she began, I was 26 years old with a computer science degree and an idea for quantum processing that everyone said was impossible. I worked 100-hour weeks. I slept in my office. I sacrificed everything for success. And I got it billions of dollars industry recognition power. She looked up. But somewhere along the way, I forgot the human element. My employees became assets. Security became insurance policies. Everything became data points and risk assessments. Until someone actually got hurt, Ethan said. Until 23 people nearly died because I prioritized profit margins over proper safety protocols. Because I hired security guards who looked impressive but had no real training. Because I created a culture where a maintenance worker couldn't speak up if they saw something wrong, they'd just get fired for wasting executive time. Amelia's voice carried both pain and determination. I don't want to run that company anymore. I want to build something better. She pulled out a document labeled Invisible Heroes Initiative and slid it across the table. Ethan scanned the contents, his eyebrows rising as he read. The program was ambitious, hiring veterans who struggled to find civilian work, single parents who needed flexible schedules, overlooked workers who had skills that didn't fit traditional corporate molds. But more than that, it was about restructuring the entire company culture. Emergency response training for every employee, mental health resources, mentorship programs, creating pathways for people like the night janitor, like who he used to be, to have voices, opportunities, respect. This is extensive, Ethan said. This is going to cost millions. Your board will never approve it. I control 62% of voting shares. The board approves what I tell them to approve. Amelia's eyes hardened with familiar CEO steel. And I don't care about the cost. You know what's expensive? Losing good people because they don't feel valued. Facing lawsuits because your security failed. Living with the knowledge that you could have prevented a tragedy, but didn't because it wasn't cost-effective. So you want me to design this program. I want you to lead it. Not just design it, embody it. You're proof that the most important people in an organization aren't always the ones with corner offices. You're living evidence that skills and character matter more than titles and degrees. Amelia paused. Ethan, I'm not offering you a job. I'm offering you a chance to change how an entire industry thinks about security value and human potential, to show other companies that investing in people, really investing in them, creates something stronger than any security system money can buy. Ethan sat back, his mind racing through possibilities and implications. This wasn't just a position. It was a complete reimagining of corporate culture with him as the face of it. The pressure of that responsibility felt enormous. What about Lila? He asked. You promised flexible scheduling, but programs like this don't build themselves. There will be long days, difficult decisions, times when I'm needed, and she's needed too. How do we handle that? We build it into the program from day one, Amelia said firmly. Family first policies, on-site childcare, remote work options. If we're asking employees to bring their whole selves to work, that includes their roles as parents, caregivers, humans with lives outside these walls. Lila would never be an inconvenience. She'd be part of the proof that this works. Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. Text from Lila's school principal. Mr. Cole, we need to discuss media presence outside school grounds. Can you call when available? Ethan's jaw tightened. He showed Amelia the message. She frowned. That's unacceptable. Jennifer, can you? She stopped, realizing her assistant wasn't there. Then she pulled out her own phone and made a call. Gerald, it's Amelia. I need security detail at PS 234 in Brooklyn. Discreet but effective. There are photographers harassing a 7-year-old, and I want it stopped. Yes, now. Thank you. She hung up and met Ethan's surprised look. Gerald runs my personal security team. They're actually competent, unlike the corporate guards we had before. They'll make sure Lila can get to and from school without cameras in her face. You don't have to. Yes, I do. Because if you're going to work with me, your family's safety and privacy are my responsibility. Not as a favor, as a requirement. Amelia's expression softened. Ethan, I have resources. Let me use them to make this transition easier for you and Lila. It's the least I can do. Ethan wanted to argue, to insist he could handle it himself, to maintain the independence he'd clung to for 3 years. But he thought about Lila trying to walk into school while photographers shouted questions. About her classmates treating her differently because her dad was suddenly famous. About the childhood he wanted her to have slipping away because he was too proud to accept help. Okay, he said quietly. Thank you. They spent the next hour discussing details, salary, benefits, start date, the specific goals for the first 90 days. Amelia had clearly thought through every aspect, but she listened to Ethan's input, modified plans based on his experience, treated him like a partner rather than an employee. It felt strange and right in equal measure. As they were finishing, a young man approached their table hesitantly. Excuse me, are you Ethan Cole? Ethan tensed, but the man quickly raised his hands in a placating gesture. I'm not a reporter, I swear. I'm David. I work at the non-profit down the street. We help at-risk youth. I just wanted to say, man, what you did was incredible. You have no idea how many of our kids saw that video and realized you don't need superpowers to make a difference. You just need courage and skills and the willingness to help. He pulled out a business card. If you ever want to come talk to them, share your story, teach them anything, we'd be honored. No pressure, no strings. Just thank you for showing them what real heroism looks like. He left before Ethan could respond, the business card sitting on the table between them. Amelia smiled. See, it's already starting. You're inspiring people. I'm terrifying people is what I'm doing. That video shows me fighting armed mercenaries with cleaning supplies. Not exactly a message I want kids learning. Confront dangerous situations with mops. That's not the message they're getting, Amelia said gently. They're learning that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that you don't have to be rich or powerful or have the perfect background to matter, that someone who cleans floors can be just as heroic as someone who sits in a boardroom. She gestured to the business card. David's right. You're showing them what courage looks like. And maybe when you're ready, that could be part of this initiative too. Mentorship programs, youth outreach, teaching the next generation that their circumstances don't define their potential. Ethan picked up the card, turning it over in his fingers. One step at a time, he said. First, I need to figure out how to be this person you think I am. You already are that person. You just need to stop fighting it. They walked out of the coffee shop together into bright morning sunshine. The city hummed around them, cars honking, people rushing to work, street vendors calling out their wares. Normal life continuing despite everything that had changed. Amelia's phone rang. She checked it and grimaced. Board member, I should take this. Go ahead. I need to call Lila's school anyway. As Amelia stepped aside to handle her call, Ethan dialed the principal. Mrs. Robertson answered on the second ring. Mr. Cole, thank you for calling back. I want to assure you first that Lila is perfectly fine. She's in class right now, happy and engaged. But we do need to address the media situation. I understand. I've arranged for security to help manage that. That's appreciated, but there's another matter. Some parents have expressed concern about the attention Lila's presence might bring. They're worried about their own children's safety and privacy with photographers around. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Are you asking me to pull her out of school? No, absolutely not. But I want you to be aware of the situation. There's going to be a PTA meeting tomorrow night, and your name will likely come up. Some parents are supportive. They think you're a hero. Others are anxious. I thought you might want to address their concerns directly. The thought of standing in front of a room full of judgmental parents made Ethan's skin crawl. But the thought of Lila facing consequences for his actions was worse. I'll be there, he said. Thank you. And Mr. Cole. For what it's worth, I think what you did was remarkable. Lila's lucky to have a father like you. After he hung up, Amelia returned her expression troubled. Everything okay? Ethan asked. Board politics. Some members think the Invisible Heroes initiative is too risky, too expensive, too radical. She shook her head. But they'll come around. What about you? How's Lila's school? Ethan explained the situation, the PTA meeting, the concerned parents. Amelia listened, then said, Would you like me to come with you? Show them that this isn't just about a viral video. It's about creating real change, real opportunities. Sometimes people are less afraid when they understand the bigger picture. You don't have to. Ethan, if we're going to be partners in this initiative, that means supporting each other. Besides, I'm a parent too. I know exactly how terrifying and judgmental those PTA meetings can be. She smiled wryly. At least when they're criticizing you, they'll give me a break. Despite his anxiety, Ethan laughed. Deal. That evening, back at the Brooklyn apartment, Ethan sat with Lila at the dining table while she did homework math problems about apples and oranges that somehow involved fractions he didn't remember being this complicated in second grade. Daddy, why were there people with cameras at school today? Lila asked, not looking up from her worksheet. Ethan had known this conversation was coming. He just wished he had better answers. Because sometimes when people do something that gets attention, other people want to know more about them. The people with cameras are reporters. They tell stories. About you. About what happened at Ms. Caldwell's building. Lila frowned, erasing a number. Tommy's mom said you're famous now. Are you? I don't know if famous is the right word. More like, people know who I am when they didn't before. Do you like it? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Ethan had to pause and consider his honest answer. No, he admitted. I don't like people taking pictures or asking questions or treating me differently. But I'm grateful people are safe. Does that make sense? Lila nodded seriously. Like when I had to give my presentation about butterflies. I didn't like everyone staring at me, but I was happy they learned about monarchs. Exactly like that. Ethan smiled, marveling at how his daughter could distill complex emotions into simple truths. Lila, tomorrow night, I have to go to a meeting at your school. Some parents are worried about the cameras and attention. I need to talk to them, help them understand everything's going to be okay. Will they be mad at you? Some of them might be nervous or confused, but I'm going to do my best to answer their questions. Lila set down her pencil and looked at him with those serious gray eyes. Daddy, you saved people. Anyone who's mad about that is silly. It's not silly to be worried about keeping kids safe. That's actually really important. But you keep people safe. That's what you do. Lila's voice carried the absolute conviction only a 7-year-old could muster. You should tell them that. Tell them you're not scary, you're helpful. Like when you helped me learn to ride my bike, or when you helped Mrs. Chen carry groceries, or when you saved Ms. Caldwell. Ethan pulled his daughter into a hug, feeling his throat tighten. When did you get so wise? I learned from my daddy, she said, squeezing him back. He's really smart, and brave, and good at pancakes. The next evening, Ethan walked into PS 234's cafeteria with Amelia beside him. Both of them dressed professionally, but not intimidatingly. Him in slacks and a button-down, her in casual business attire that wouldn't scream billionaire CEO. About 40 parents filled the room, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Mrs. Robertson introduced them, explained the purpose of the meeting, then stepped aside. Ethan stood in front of the crowd, his hands sweating, his heart pounding. Public speaking had never been his strength. He was the guy who trained others, who worked behind the scenes, who stayed invisible. But that option was gone now. Thank you for coming, he began. I know you have concerns, and you have every right to them. Your children's safety and privacy are the most important things in the world. Trust me, as a parent, I understand that completely. A woman in the front row raised her hand. Then why did you put them at risk? Those photographers are here because of you. You're right, and I'm sorry for that. I never wanted this attention, and I'm working with security professionals to minimize the disruption. He gestured to Amelia. This is Amelia Caldwell. She's helping coordinate protection for the school, not just for my daughter, but for all the children here. Another parent spoke up, a man with crossed arms and a skeptical expression. We saw the video. You're clearly trained in combat weapons tactical operations. What else haven't you told us? Are you dangerous? The question hung in the air, and Ethan saw others nodding, wanting the same answer. I was a federal tactical instructor, he said quietly. I taught law enforcement and security personnel how to handle crisis situations. I left that career 3 years ago when my wife died because I wanted to give my daughter a stable, normal life. I took a job in maintenance because it was steady, it had reasonable hours, and it let me be the father Lila needed. He met the skeptical man's eyes. Am I trained? Yes. Am I dangerous only to people who threaten others? To everyone else, including your children. I'm just a dad trying to do his best. A younger woman raised her hand. My daughter Maya is in Lila's class. She came home yesterday, saying Lila's daddy is a superhero. That's a lot of pressure to put on a 7-year-old. Ethan's expression softened. You're absolutely right. Which is why I've talked to Lila about expectations, about normalcy, about the fact that I'm not a superhero, I'm just her dad. But I can't control what other kids say or think. All I can do is try to minimize the disruption and hope that eventually this attention fades and we can all go back to normal. What if it doesn't fade? Someone called from the back. What if those cameras stay? What if your presence here continues to impact our children? Before Ethan could respond, Amelia stepped forward. If I may, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to boardrooms and negotiations. I understand your concerns because I share them. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and if I thought Mr. Cole's presence endangered any child, I wouldn't be here. But the truth is, the media attention isn't about violence or danger, it's about heroism. About an ordinary person doing extraordinary things to protect others. And yes, that's uncomfortable. Yes, it's disruptive. But is the lesson we want to teach our children that, when someone does something brave, we ostracize them? Or do we show them that communities support each other, especially when circumstances are difficult? The room was quiet. Parents exchanging glances. Maya's mother spoke again, her voice softer now. What happens if there's another situation? Another emergency? Ethan answered honestly. Then I'll do whatever it takes to keep people safe, including your children. But I pray that day never comes. I pray the most dangerous thing I face is helping with the school bake sale. A few parents chuckled at that. Mrs. Robertson stood. If I may add something, Lila Cole is one of the kindest, most thoughtful students I've had in 20 years of teaching. She helps other children she shares without being asked, and she treats everyone with respect. Those qualities don't appear by accident. They're taught by parents who embody them. She looked at Ethan. Whatever Mr. Cole did in his past, what I see is a devoted father raising a remarkable child. That's who he is in my classroom. That's who deserves our consideration. One by one, parents began nodding. Not all of them, some still looked skeptical, worried, unconvinced. But enough that the tension in the room began to ease. As the meeting wrapped up, several parents approached Ethan, some to express support, others to ask questions, a few to simply say they hoped things worked out. Maya's mother shook his hand and said her daughter thought Lila was lucky to have a brave dad, which made Ethan's eyes sting with unexpected emotion. Walking to the parking lot afterward, Amelia touched his arm. "You did well in there. I felt like I was drowning. Welcome to leadership. That feeling never fully goes away, you just get better at swimming." She smiled. "But seriously, Ethan, the way you spoke to those parents with honesty and humility, that's exactly what this initiative needs. Authenticity, real human connection. Not corporate speak or polished presentations, but genuine truth." Ethan looked back at the school, at the building where his daughter spent her days learning and growing and becoming whoever she was meant to be. "I just want her to have a normal childhood," he said quietly. "Normal is overrated," Amelia replied. "What Lila has is something better, a father who shows her every day that doing the right thing matters more than doing the easy thing. That's not normal, that's exceptional." As Ethan drove home that night, he thought about all the ways his life had changed in the span of a week, from invisible janitor to viral sensation, from hiding his past to confronting it, from running from who he was to cautiously, carefully stepping into who he might become. It was terrifying. It was exhausting. But for the first time in 3 years, it also felt like living instead of just surviving. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth the risk. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the main lobby of Caldwell Industries, watching workers install a bronze sculpture that made his chest tighten with emotion he couldn't quite name. The sculpture was simple, a wet floor sign rendered in gleaming metal, mounted on a marble pedestal. Engraved at its base were words he'd spoken without thinking on that chaotic night that changed everything. "Calm doesn't mean weak. Invisible doesn't mean unimportant." "It's perfect," Amelia said, appearing at his elbow with 2 cups of coffee, a ritual they'd developed over countless early morning meetings. "The dedication ceremony is set for tomorrow. Press employees, some of the people who were in that conference room. They all want to be here." Ethan accepted the coffee, still staring at the sculpture. "I'm not sure I can do this. Stand up there and give a speech about heroism when I still feel like I just got lucky." "Luck doesn't disarm 6 armed mercenaries with cleaning supplies," Amelia said dryly. "But I understand the hesitation. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. The sculpture speaks for itself." "It's not just about speaking." Ethan turned to face her. "It's about what this represents. You're memorializing one night, but the Invisible Heroes Initiative is supposed to be about every day. About the maintenance worker who notices a security flaw. About the receptionist who sees someone acting suspicious. About creating a culture where everyone matters, not just the guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time." Amelia studied him with that piercing intelligence he'd come to respect deeply over the past months. They'd become genuine partners in building the program, butting heads over details, challenging each other's assumptions, pushing the initiative to be better than either of them could have created alone. "You're right," she said finally. "So let's make sure tomorrow isn't about celebrating you, it's about celebrating what you represented. The idea that everyone in this building has value, has skills, has the potential to make a difference." "How do we do that?" Amelia smiled. "We let the invisible heroes speak for themselves." The next afternoon, the lobby was packed with employees, media, and special guests. Ethan stood off to the side watching as Amelia took the small stage they'd erected near the sculpture. She looked every inch the CEO in her tailored suit, but when she spoke, her voice carried genuine warmth rather than corporate polish. 6 months ago, something happened in this building that changed me, she began. Changed all of us. We faced a crisis that exposed our vulnerabilities, our failures, our assumptions about safety and security. 23 people nearly died because we didn't value the right things. She paused, letting that sink in. But we also witnessed something extraordinary. We learned that the most important person in a crisis isn't necessarily the one with the highest salary or the biggest office. Sometimes it's the one we walk past every day without seeing. The one whose name we don't know. The one we've trained ourselves to overlook. Amelia gestured to the bronze sculpture. This memorial isn't just about one night. It's about every day. It's about the hundreds of employees at Caldwell Industries who show up, do essential work, and make this company function, the people we've taken for granted for too long. Today, we're changing that. She nodded to someone off stage, and a video began playing on the large screen behind her. Ethan recognized the footage interviews he'd helped conduct over the past months with employees across every level of the company. First was Marcus, the security guard, who'd been on duty the night of the attack. I froze when those men came in. I had all this training, all this equipment, but I froze. Ethan didn't freeze. He saw what needed to be done, and he did it. That's what the new training program teaches us, not just tactics, but confidence, trusting yourself to act when it matters. Next was Karen, the overnight receptionist, who'd been tied up during the attack. For years I felt invisible at this company, like my job didn't matter because I wasn't in tech or development. But the new initiative showed me that everyone matters. Now I'm part of the security awareness team teaching other employees what to look for, how to report concerns. I'm not invisible anymore. Then, Emily Chen, the young woman who'd nearly been executed. I have nightmares still. Therapy helps. But what really helped was being part of creating the mental health support program. Taking my trauma and using it to make sure other employees have resources if they need them. Ethan taught me that surviving isn't enough. You have to find purpose in what you survived. One by one, employees told their stories. The single mother in accounting who'd been promoted to the Finance Safety Oversight Committee. The veteran in the mailroom who now led active shooter response training. The intern who'd developed the company-wide emergency communication app. Each person Amelia had once walked past without seeing, now empowered to lead, to contribute, to matter. When the video ended, Amelia spoke again. The Invisible Heroes Initiative isn't a program, it's a promise. A promise that at Caldwell Industries your value isn't determined by your title or your salary. It's determined by your character, your skills, your willingness to show up and make a difference. And today, I want to introduce the person who embodies that promise, our Director of Human Risk and Security Reform, Ethan Cole. The applause was deafening as Ethan reluctantly stepped onto the stage. He'd never gotten comfortable with the attention, the recognition, the way people looked at him now. But he'd learned to channel that discomfort into purpose. Thank you. He said, his voice quiet, but carrying through the microphone. But I'm not the hero of this story. The heroes are the people you just saw, the ones who took their fear and turned it into action. The ones who decided that surviving meant more than just staying alive. The ones who chose to build something better. He looked out at the crowd and found the faces that mattered most. Mrs. Chen, who'd driven in from Queens because she refused to miss this. Jennifer Hassan, who'd become not just a colleague, but a friend. Detective Morrison, who'd closed the case against the mercenaries and told Ethan he'd made her job both harder and easier harder because he'd acted outside protocol easier, because he'd saved lives. And there in the front row sat Lila. She was wearing her favorite purple dress and holding Mr. Trunk, her eyes shining with pride as she watched her daddy speak to a room full of people. Beside her sat Emma Caldwell, Amelia's daughter, the two girls having become fast friends through playdates that Amelia and Ethan scheduled between meetings. My daughter taught me something important. Ethan continued, his voice softening. She taught me that being good isn't about grand gestures or viral moments. It's about showing up every day and trying to help. It's about seeing people who feel invisible and reminding them they matter. It's about using whatever skills you have, whether that's coding or cleaning, or just being kind to make the world a little bit safer, a little bit better. He gestured to the bronze sculpture. This wet floor sign represents a moment. But what we're building here, what all of you are building, that's a movement. A movement that says everyone deserves to be seen, valued, protected. Not because of what they do for a living, but because they're human beings who matter. The applause this time felt different, not celebratory, but affirming, like a collective agreement that yes, this was the world they wanted to build. After the ceremony, as the crowd mingled and media conducted interviews, Ethan found himself cornered by a familiar face. Director Hastings, looking older, but still carrying that sharp federal authority. "Impressive work, Cole," Hastings said, shaking his hand. "You've built something special here." "What are you doing in New York?" Ethan asked, "seeing how one of my best instructors is handling civilian life." Hastings smiled, "And wondering if you'd consider consulting on a new federal training program. Not field work, just curriculum development, sharing what you've learned here about empowering everyday people to recognize and respond to threats." Ethan didn't answer immediately. 6 months ago, he would have refused instantly, too afraid of being pulled back into that world. But 6 months of working with Amelia had taught him that you could engage with your past without being consumed by it. "Consulting only," he said finally. "Limited hours, and my daughter's schedule comes first. Wouldn't have it any other way." Hastings extended his hand again. "Welcome back, Ethan. On your terms this time." As Hastings walked away, Amelia appeared with both girls in tow, each holding juice boxes and looking pleased with themselves. "Daddy, Emma and I have been talking," Lila announced with the seriousness only a 7-year-old could muster. "We want to start a club at school." "What kind of club?" Ethan asked, kneeling to their level. "The Helper Club," Emma chimed in. "Where kids learn how to help other kids, like if someone's sad, or if someone falls down, or if someone's being mean. We want to teach kindness," Lila added, "just like you taught the grown-ups about safety." Ethan looked up at Amelia, who was trying not to laugh. "Did you put them up to this?" "Absolutely not. They came up with it entirely on their own during the reception." Amelia's expression softened. "Though I did tell them I thought it was a brilliant idea." Daddy, can we start the club?" Lila's eyes were wide with hope. Ethan pulled his daughter into a hug. "I think that's the best idea I've heard all day. You'll have to talk to Mrs. Robertson about it. Get permission, maybe find a teacher to sponsor it." "We can do that," both girls said in unison, then ran off to discuss their plans, leaving the two adults alone. "They're going to change the world," Amelia said quietly. "They already are," Ethan replied, "just by being them." They stood there for a moment, watching the girls, watching the employees, mingling around the bronze sculpture, watching something new take shape in a building that had once represented corporate distance and hierarchy. "I got an interesting call yesterday," Amelia said. "Forbes wants to do a cover story on the Invisible Heroes Initiative. They're calling it a revolutionary approach to corporate culture." "Are you going to do it?" "Only if you agree to be interviewed too. This is your program as much as mine." Ethan shook his head. "It's not about me. It never was." "That's exactly why it works," Amelia said. "Because you genuinely believe that. You're not interested in credit or recognition, you're interested in impact. That authenticity is what makes people trust this initiative." Before Ethan could respond, Emily Chen approached them, her mother beside her. The older woman, the one who'd thanked him in the lobby months ago, was holding a wrapped package. "Mr. Cole, Ms. Caldwell, I'm sorry to interrupt," Emily said, "but my mom wanted to give you something." Mrs. Chen. Emily's mother, not his neighbor. Mrs. Chen, though the coincidence of the name had become a running joke, stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "You gave me my daughter back," she said simply. And Emily told me what you're building here, this program that helps people heal and find purpose. I wanted to contribute. She handed the package to Ethan. I'm a seamstress. It's what I do. Ethan carefully unwrapped the package and found a beautifully embroidered banner. On it was the wet floor sign symbol, surrounded by words in elegant script. Invisible Heroes Initiative, where everyone matters. It's for your office, Mrs. Chen explained. So you remember why you do this work. So everyone who sees it remembers they matter. Ethan's throat was too tight to speak. He managed a nod, and Amelia stepped in smoothly. It's beautiful, Mrs. Chen. Thank you. We'll hang it with pride. As the afternoon faded into evening, the crowd gradually dispersed. Employees returned to their work or headed home. Media packed up their equipment. Amelia left to take Emma to her father's house for the week, and Ethan found himself alone in the lobby with Lila standing in front of the bronze sculpture that somehow captured everything and nothing about who he was. Daddy. Lila tugged his hand. Are you sad? No, sweetheart, not sad, just thinking. About Mommy. Ethan looked down at his daughter, surprised. They talked about Sarah, but Lila didn't bring her up often. When she did, it was usually because something important was happening. Yeah, he admitted. I was thinking she'd be proud of you, of who you're becoming. Would she be proud of you too? Ethan knelt down, looking into those gray eyes that were so much like Sarah's. I don't know. I hope so. I'm trying to be the person she believed I could be. Lila thought about this with the gravity children apply to big concepts. Then she wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, I'm proud of you. You help people. You help me. You're the best daddy ever. And there in the lobby of Caldwell Industries, surrounded by symbols of transformation and change, Ethan Cole finally let himself believe something he'd been too afraid to accept for 3 years, that moving forward didn't mean forgetting the past. That healing didn't require erasing the pain. That he could honor Sarah's memory not by hiding who he was, but by becoming the best version of himself for Lila, for the people who depended on him, for himself. Come on, sweetheart, he said, standing and taking her hand. Let's go home. Can we get ice cream on the way? Absolutely. As they walked toward the exit, Ethan glanced back one more time at the sculpture. At the words engraved in bronze that had become a philosophy, a movement, a promise. Calm doesn't mean weak. Invisible doesn't mean unimportant. 3 years ago, he'd been a broken man, trying to disappear into the background, convinced that staying invisible was the only way to keep his daughter safe. That night, when armed men had threatened innocent lives, he'd learned something crucial: you can't hide from who you are. You can only choose what you do with it. He'd chosen to step forward, to use his skills, to build something bigger than himself. And in doing so, he'd discovered that the real heroism wasn't in that 60-second confrontation with armed mercenaries. It was in every day after showing up, doing the work, helping people find their own strength, teaching his daughter by example that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. The wet floor sign in the lobby would remain there, a permanent reminder of one chaotic night. But the real legacy wasn't bronze and marble. It was in the employees who now felt valued and empowered. In the single parents who'd been given opportunities they'd never imagined. In the veterans who'd found purpose again. In the kids at PS 234 who'd started a helper club because 2 7-year-old girls believed kindness could change the world. It was in every person who'd been invisible and was now seen. 1 year after the attack, Caldwell Industries had become a case study in corporate transformation. Dozens of companies had reached out asking how to implement similar programs. Ethan had been invited to speak at conferences, consult with Fortune 500 companies, even testify before Congress about workplace safety and employee empowerment. He'd turned down most of it, because the work that mattered wasn't in boardrooms or hearing rooms. It was in the daily interactions with employees who were learning they had value. It was in the training sessions where he taught people not just how to respond to emergencies, but how to prevent them through awareness and communication. It was in the quiet moments when someone thanked him for seeing them, for believing in them, for giving them a chance. And it was in the evenings when he picked Lila up from school, helped her with homework, listened to her excited reports about the Helper Club's latest project, and tucked her into bed, knowing that she was growing up, understanding something essential, that your worth wasn't measured by your title, or your bank account, or your viral moments. It was measured by how you treated people when nobody was watching. By whether you helped or walked past. By the choice you made every single day to be the kind of person who made the world a little bit better. On quiet nights when Lila was asleep and the city lights flickered beyond his windows, Ethan would sometimes pull out his phone and look at the photos he'd saved from that night. Not of himself, he'd deleted those, but of the people. Marcus hugging his wife, Emily Chen smiling with her mother, Karen back at her reception desk no longer invisible. The intern who'd been crying in the corner now leading emergency response training. 23 lives saved. But the ripple effects were impossible to count. How many people had those 23 gone home to? How many lives had they touched? How many children still had parents because one janitor had refused to stay quiet? The blue bracelet on Ethan's wrist, Lila's gift worn and faded, now still carried the same words. Stay calm. Come home. He'd done both. He'd stayed calm in the chaos. And he'd come home not just to his apartment, but to himself, to the person he was meant to be, to a life that honored both his past and his future. Ethan Cole would never forget that he'd once been a federal tactical instructor who taught heroes how to be brave. But he'd learned something more important, that heroism wasn't a skill you taught in a classroom or a moment you captured on video. It was a choice, made every day, by ordinary people in ordinary moments who decided that invisible didn't mean unimportant, that calm didn't mean weak, that showing up mattered more than standing out. And somewhere in the background of his transformed life, while Amelia Caldwell built an empire that valued people over profit, and Lila Cole started a kindness revolution in second grade. Ethan did what he'd always done best. He showed up, he helped, he made a difference. Quietly, calmly, purposefully. Just like the janitor with the mop who reminded the world that greatness doesn't shout, it shows up when it matters most. And then it goes home to the people it loves, content in the knowledge that today, like every day, someone who felt invisible was finally seen.